You are 25, and you get paid by the foot, not the weld, the foot of water above your head. Deck work pays $18.96 an hour. 300 feet down, it pays $81.27. Nobody pays you more for a better weld down there. The rate climbs because the water above you climbs, and every foot of it presses on your chest. The men who earn the most agreed to go deepest, which is the same as agreeing to be hardest to reach. This is every level of an underwater welder's career, and what it costs to climb. If you want to see how these trades really pay, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. We start at level 1, the tender. The tender earns $18.96 an hour, roughly $39,430 a year. Most of them are 20 to 25. You do not dive. You dress the man who does, you flake his umbilical so it never fouls, and you keep one hand on that hose for as long as he is in the water. Your second month you let 3 feet of slack pile at your feet while you reach for a shackle. The line loops a cleat. The man below feels the pull, stops working, and comes up. Nothing happens to him. Everything happens to you, on the deck, in front of everyone. Getting in requires a commercial dive school certificate, a diving physical, and a boat that will take you on as deck crew. A great many quit inside the first season, and it is almost never the water. It is standing in the cold for 10 hours watching somebody else do the job you paid to learn. Here is what nobody tells you. The tender is the only person on that boat who knows exactly where the diver is. He tracks him by feel through a hose. At the Divers Institute of Technology in Seattle, tending is taught before welding is taught. The man on the other end of your hose started exactly here. The breakout diver earns $22.33 an hour, roughly $46,440 a year. Most of them are 22 to 28. Your first dives are shallow and dull on purpose. You inspect pilings. You clean growth off a hull. You get sent down to find something somebody dropped. Your fourth dive you go in without checking your own bailout bottle, because the tender checked it, and the tender is your friend. The valve is a quarter turn shy of open. You never need it, and you spend the rest of your career opening that valve yourself. Getting here requires logged bottom time, a topside crew that will break you out, and an Association of Diving Contractors International card. Plenty of them stall right here, because breaking out is not a test you pass. It is a decision somebody else makes about you. Here is what nobody tells you. There is no national list of who is allowed to dive. The trade polices itself through contractor associations and insurance, which means your record travels by phone call. The next card in your hand is the one that changes the number, and the number is built in a way no other trade builds it. Here is the mechanism that runs this trade, and it does not look like any other trade's pay. In most jobs, you are paid for time or for output. In commercial diving, you are paid for time, and then you are paid again for depth. The day rate covers you being there. On top of it sits depth pay, and depth pay is not a bonus for the day. It is charged by the foot, every foot below a set line, on every dive you make. That means the pay is not a number, it is a slope. A man who works at 40 feet and a man who works at 200 feet can hold the same card, do the same weld, and take home checks that are not close to each other. Nobody had to be promoted for that gap to exist. One of them just went further down. The problem with a slope is that it never argues with you. It never tells you a job is a bad idea. It only tells you the number gets bigger. A diver looking at a hard job in deep water is looking at the most money he has ever been offered. At the exact moment, he has the most reason to say no. A day rate is a wage. Depth pay is an offer, and it is made new on every job, to a man who has already proved he will take it. Every trade has a reason men take the dangerous work. In this one, the reason is printed on the ticket before the dive. The welder diver earns $29.47 an hour, roughly $61,300 a year. Most of them are 25 to 35. This is the level people picture when they hear the job. You burn underwater, in zero visibility, by feel, on structures you have never seen dry. Your first production weld is on a pipeline clamp in a river. You run a good bead by touch, and it passes visual. It fails when they shoot it, because water pulled the heat out faster than you thought, and the metal went hard and brittle at the edge. The whole joint gets cut out. Getting here requires an underwater welding qualification, a shop that will let you burn on their work, and a tolerance for doing skilled work blind. A good many never get past this level, and it is not about hands. It is that this is where a man decides how deep he is willing to go for money. Here is what nobody tells you. Wet welding is a compromise, and everybody in the trade knows it. The American Welding Society's underwater code sorts these welds into classes, and the best of them are still not the same as a weld made in air. The deep air diver earns $43.15 an hour, roughly $89,750 a year. Most of them are 30 to 40. You are working past the depth where air is comfortable and into the depth where it is a drug. Your first deep air job, you catch nitrogen narcosis at 160 feet and you do not know it, because that is what it does. You spend 11 minutes trying to fit a bolt that is not the right bolt. Topside hears it in your voice before you do and calls you up. Getting here requires deep air qualification, a company that runs a chamber on site, and a decompression record nobody has to argue about. A meaningful share of divers stop here on purpose. They have seen what the next step does to men in their 50s. Here is what nobody tells you. Coming up is the dangerous part, not going down. The U.S. Navy Diving Manual sets the schedules the industry works from, and those tables are not suggestions. Everything below this depth is bought with your body, and it is time to talk about the bill. The trade takes payment in 3 currencies. The first is your joints. Nitrogen that comes out of solution too fast can lodge in bone, and the bone dies in place. It has a name, dysbaric osteonecrosis, and it usually shows up in the shoulder or the hip years after the dive that caused it. There is no repair, there is a replacement. The second is your hearing and your sinuses. Pressure works on every airspace in your head, every dive, every day, for a career. Old divers have flat spots in their hearing and eardrums that have been repaired more than once. The third is the one that costs the most and is talked about least. This job is done in water, where you cannot see your own glove. A diver at depth is a man working by touch inside a place that is actively trying to move him, and the mind does not shrug that off. Men in this trade carry a very specific kind of alertness that does not switch off on land. Every trade sells you the wage and lets you find the invoice yourself. This one hands you the invoice in the chamber on the way back up while you are still being paid. The mixed gas diver earns $65.86 an hour, roughly $136,990 a year. Most of them are 30 to 45. Air stops working at these depths, so the air comes out and helium goes in, and your voice stops being your voice. Your first mixed gas job, you get cold in a way you have not been cold before, because helium pulls heat out of a man far faster than air does. Your hands go before you notice. You finish the weld badly, and you know it while you are doing it, and the fix is hot water in the suit, not courage. Getting here requires mixed gas certification, a contractor with the spread to support it, and a chamber crew you trust with your blood. A small share of the trade ever works mixed gas. The work exists in a handful of places, and the men in those places tend to stay. Here is what nobody tells you. Helium makes you legible only to a machine. Crews run your voice through an unscrambler to understand you, which means the man who can help you hears you through a box. Depth is not the only thing in this water that can hold a man under. On October 27, 2020, a commercial diver named Alex Reed Paxton went into the water at the Lake Oliver Dam in Georgia. He was 31 years old and had more than 10 years in the trade. The crew operating the dam had confirmed that everything was closed. One valve was not. Water moving from the high side to the low side through that opening created a pressure difference across it, and when his left arm passed near the intake, it was pulled in and held. The force was not the kind a man pulls against. Investigators found that his chest could not expand against it. He could speak, and he did, and the recovery took far longer than his air was ever going to matter. He died of mechanical asphyxia within minutes of being caught. He did everything he was trained to do. He was told the water was still, by people who believed it was, and the water was not. There is a name for what killed him, and every diver in America is taught it before he is taught anything else. It is called differential pressure, and divers call it delta P. It is not current, and it is not suction in the way people imagine. It is what happens when water on one side of an opening is under more pressure than water on the other side, and the only thing holding it back is a gate, a valve, or a piece of debris. The numbers are ugly in a way that is hard to picture. A small opening with a modest difference across it can generate a pull measured in tons. A diver does not feel it as a tug. He feels it as a wall that has already closed on him. There is no swimming out of it, and no crew on a boat strong enough to pull him out of it. The water has to be stopped first. The rule that exists to prevent this is lockout and tagout, and underwater it is different from every other trade. On land, you lock the energy source yourself, and you keep the key. In the water, you cannot. Somebody on the surface, in a control room you have never seen, operating equipment you did not install, tells you it is closed. Your life is now the accuracy of another man's sentence. OSHA treats this as its own hazard and publishes guidance on it, and the industry runs the same drill everywhere. You verify. You have the operator physically locked out, tagged, and confirmed. You send something down first when you can. You do not enter water near an intake on anyone's word alone, including the word of people who are certain, because the people who are certain are the ones who get divers killed. The saturation diver earns $81.27 an hour, roughly $169,040 a year. Most of them are 30 to 50. That figure is the highest paid metropolitan market in the country for this trade, and it is above the 90th percentile of the national table for one reason. This man does not go home at the end of the shift. He lives at pressure. Your first saturation job, you spend 28 days in a chamber the size of a van with 5 other men, going to work through a bell and coming back to the same steel room. On day 9, you realize nobody has said anything unnecessary in 4 days. That is not tension. That is what men do to survive proximity. Getting here requires saturation training, a deep water contractor, and a body that has come through years of decompression without a mark on it. Very few ever do this work, and the ones who leave it usually leave for the same reason. It is not the depth, it is the 28 days. Here is what nobody tells you. The dangerous part of saturation is not the water. It is that a man at storage depth cannot be brought to the surface quickly under any circumstance, for any emergency, at all. Companies like Oceaneering plan every job around that single fact. There is money below the ladder too, and it is the same trade turned inside out. Some men leave the water for inspection and testing, reading the welds instead of making them. Some go to marine salvage estimating, where knowing what a job really takes is worth more than being able to do it. A few end up teaching at the schools, which pays least and outlasts everything, because a man's shoulders will quit before his judgment does. All 3 of those jobs pay less than the water on the day you leave it, and all 3 of them are still being worked at 60. The one thing every exit has in common is that it stops the clock on the bill. You are still paid for what you know about water. You are no longer paid by the foot. Tender, $18.96 an hour, holding a hose on a cold deck. Breakout diver, $22.33, cleaning a hull in a harbor. Welder diver, $29.47, burning by feel in black water. Deep air diver, $43.15, narcosis, at 160 feet. Mixed gas diver, $65.86, talking through a box. Saturation diver, $81.27, 28 days, in a steel room. That is the answer to the number you were offered at 25. The foot was never a rate. It was a distance from help, priced in dollars so it would look like an opportunity. Nobody in this trade is paid for the weld. He is paid for how far he agreed to be from the surface. Next, every level of a correctional officer.